Josh Heupel and Joey Halzle are giving off the vibes that they aren't trying to ease Nico Iamaleava in at all, despite being a redshirt freshman first-year starter. Josh Heupel said on Vol calls earlier this week, he said, quote, "The playbook is wide open for Nico Iamaleava." That follows what Joey Halzle, the offensive coordinator, said last week when he said the Vols, quote, "Don't feel like you've got a freshman quarterback that's never done it full time before." Making it very clear to me that they are planning to completely throw everything out at Nico Iamaleava. Now, it can be one of two things, or it could be both, which is that it could be this offense is very easy and simple to learn. I think it is for quarterbacks. I don't think there's a lot. I think it's harder for a receiver to pick up than a quarterback, guys. I'm just being honest. But it also, I think part of this is, I think Nico Iamaleava is very mature and very capable and very able to pick up things that are thrown at him very, very quickly. And that's a very good sign for a young quarterback.
None of this surprises me. I thought that Nico would be able to handle everything, but I don't agree that this is an easy offense. I think that what we have seen to this point, we have seen a pretty easy offense for a quarterback to play. You're reading the safety. That's what you're doing. You're running the football. You have a strong running game. But I think there's more to this offense. And from what I've been told, you could see some 2 tight end sets in short yardage, which you haven't seen under Josh Heupel. You could see them substitute receivers in between drives, which you haven't seen a lot. And that would throw more at Nico because each receiver has their nuances, right? Correct. You also could run some 4 receiver sets. So I think the offense has been simple to this point because you've had inexperience somewhere, and oftentimes at the quarterback position. So I'm not surprised at all that they're throwing the book at Nico, because I think he was studying Tennessee's offense. I think he was ready to go to some extent. What was the game last year where it looked like Joe Milton might come out? It was fairly early in the season. And I just remember Nico's, he was bounced up and ready to go and engaged and ready to run on the field. Can you remember that? It was a slight knee injury, maybe?
Let's see. It was, I think, the 4th game of the year. I know the one you're talking about. It was the Texas San Antonio game after he had that 80-yard touchdown run and he got banged up a little bit.
Yes. So great point about the red zone, Wes. So I think that this offense has a lot more facets to it. It's all the staple is always going to be reading the safety and pressuring the safety to either play the run, play the slot, or play the wide out. You're pressuring the safety. That's the whole goal with this offense. Now, that's not going to change, but I think there's more to it. Let me ask you this. Do you think Nico can handle as much or more of the offensive playbook than Joe Milton last year or Hendon Hooker the year before? Because both had an experience advantage, not only in Heupel's system, but in college football in general.
Do I think Nico?
Do you think he could be more adept at running Tennessee's offense than Milton last year or Hooker in 2022?
I don't want to say more adept, but I think he can be as adept at running it as Joe Milton was last year. And I will say this, Hendon Hooker is a little bit more difficult because Hendon Hooker was a 6th-year senior. Hendon Hooker just had so much experience studying and understanding things. And I mean, honestly, he's just one of the smartest people to ever play quarterback at Tennessee. Is that fair to say? And Tennessee's had some smart quarterbacks, Josh Dobbs, Peyton Manning, to name a couple.
Yes.
And so I think Hendon Hooker is on that like Mount Rushmore of just smartest quarterbacks. Now, Joe Milton is smart. I'm not saying he's not smart, but I think Nico can do what Joe Milton did because I don't think Joe Milton reacted quickly enough in this offense on the field and was able to do that. And so because of that, I do think Nico is more capable. So I think he will understand it better than Milton. He won't understand it as well as Hendon Hooker. I will say that. I think it's going to be a little more limited than Hendon Hooker, but I actually still think that won't stop him from being better than Hendon Hooker this year because I think there's some throws he can make that Hendon Hooker just couldn't make.
Okay. So, do you think he can be as adept just from the neck up as Hendon Hooker? So, you've already said not more so because he hasn't had the time. But I will say equal to. And first, let me tell you what my chef at Asia Cafe said last night. I asked him about Nico. Why? Because he was Polynesian, and he mentioned that. So I said, hey, what do you think about Tennessee's quarterback? He said, you're pretty good. And so that's his response. Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes, 5 locations to choose from, asiacafe.org, asiacafe.org. But he did remember Jesse Mahalona, and he played football in Hawaii. So it was kind of cool. And I told everybody at the hibachi thing how Polynesian players 100% of the time are always great players, and I would bet on them like no other. And I said, I apologize for stereotyping, but it's a positive stereotype. Is that okay? I think he's every bit as adept as Hendon Hooker heading into the season. And I will go ahead and say even more so. That's nothing against Hendon Hooker's processing, which I think was good. But I think you'll see it's going to be at a higher level with Nico. Maybe not against tough opponents in the first half of the season, but eventually I think he's going to be a significantly better and more efficient quarterback by the end of the season than Hendon Hooker.
That's hot.
Yeah, it is.
I think Nico Iamaleava may be more adept than Hendon Hooker. But let me put it to you this way, Dave.
You're not committing.
I'm sorry?
You're not committing.
Well, here's why. Okay. He may be more adept than Hendon Hooker, but would you agree it's not like there's not a gigantic gulf between the two, right? It's not like an obvious adeptness, like because it's impossible to be that much more adept than Hendon Hooker because he's pretty adept, right?
No, he was like was he the second highest rated quarterback in the nation or the first in 2022? So I mean, we're talking about pretty stratospheric heights.
Yes, basically they're in the same tier, even if you think Nico Iamaleava is more adept. Is that fair to say?
That's fair.
If they're in the same tier, I just don't see how it's possible that Nico Iamaleava as a second-year starter would be as adept as Hendon Hooker was as a 6th-year senior. Now, let me throw a caveat. 2022 was just Hendon Hooker's second year in the system, just like this is Nico Iamaleava's second year in the system.
Bingo.
And so that is fair, but don't you think there are other subtle nuances of experience that you can get from having played in other systems and just played college football up until that point?
Yeah, and I think that all helped Hendon Hooker. I think there's a transition, and you kind of might disagree with this. I think there's a transition just in terms of getting the weight room, getting to class, and class isn't as important as it used to be, guys. I'm just going to be honest with you. But I think there's a transition there. So Hendon Hooker knew that coming in. But I tell you, I just believe there's been a team of people around Nico, and that's a team of people from Tennessee making sure that he is getting all the coaching that he needs. But there's also a team of people, and that's his family, which goes back to the Polynesian thing. They're strong on family. And again, I'm not trying to stereotype, but it's positive, Caleb. Does that make it okay? If it's positive, I'm just telling you, it's not a huge sample size, but it's a dozen players and every single one. So I believe he's got family that have moved to Knoxville to help be around him. The support staff, there's too much at stake when you sign that type of contract. So unless he just showed up on campus and was an absolute dud, and I've covered those guys before, or got in trouble or something else, I thought he would head into this season at about a Hendon Hooker clip, just short of it, and end up being at that clip by the end of the season. So a lot of you may not remember how good Hendon Hooker was in 2022. So, let's take a look at that for just a second, if I may. I'm going to go by rating, and Hendon Hooker was number 2 to CJ Stroud, 175.5. I'm not telling you that Nico is going to be the second highest rated quarterback in the nation at the end of the season, but I would be stunned if he wasn't top 10.
Oh, I agree. And one of the things that Nico has right now that Hendon Hooker didn't have in 2021 at the very least is Nico Iamaleava's pocket presence is significantly better. So for those who are looking at Hendon Hooker stats, his passing stats were actually a little bit better in 2021 but he took this is kind of the caveat. He took a lot more sacks because his pocket presence wasn't there. That's kind of the flaw in quarterback ratings, right, Dave? Is they don't factor sacks against the quarterback when if you've watched enough football, you know half the time the sack is the quarterback's fault as much as it is the offensive lineman's fault, maybe even more. And I think Hendon Hooker got much better at that at 2022. It's not very clear, but Nico last year had against Iowa just showed a level of pocket presence that we never saw even from Hendon Hooker. And to your point about Polynesians, Dave, I just want a side note. You know, Tua Tagovailoa has lit into his former coach this week, Brian Flores. And you know that stereotype is true because everybody just reflexively agrees with Tua Tagovailoa. Because typically people would say you shouldn't trash your former coach. And everyone's like, no, he's got to be honest. He would never do that otherwise.
Do you know what my chef said yesterday at Asia Cafe? To go to asiacafe.org. He said, I just told him, I said, these scallops are excellent. And he goes, you know why? And I said, why? Because I made it and I'm the best. And he didn't say it in a cocky way, but I believed him. And from that point, there's a quiet confidence, not a cocky there. I just believe he has the mental makeup. But you took it to the Iowa game. That's where I wanted to go to. Great minds think alike, or crazy minds think alike. Would Hendon Hooker have played as well as Nico in the Iowa game? Because I thought Nico played perfectly because I would drop people back, and Nico, with his grand debut, I'm sure he wanted to make those Sports Center highlight plays, but they just weren't there to be had very often. I love the fact that he didn't force the ball. I love the fact that he didn't get flustered. Forget the fact that he might not have threw an 80-yard touchdown pass and all that. I know he can do that stuff. It was his mental maturity in that game that stands out, guys. I mean, that Iowa was not going to let Tennessee beat them deep. And I'm not sure that Hendon Hooker facing that same defense would have done as well or better.
I think he would have done as well as the sixth-year senior Hendon Hooker would have done as well. And remember this, because here's the thing. Hendon Hooker, I don't know if he would have taken as much what the defense gave him. I think he would have created more big plays because Nico can run, but Hendon Hooker isn't a can-run guy. Hendon Hooker is a dual threat. Is like, oh, he will destroy you with his legs. Is that fair to say? Like, Hendon Hooker's not just like Nico's a pocket passer who can run and will run if the lane is there. If Hendon Hooker takes off to run, he's not looking to keep you honest with 7 yards. He's looking to gain 50 yards.
Agreed.
And I think that's the big difference.
Agreed. Do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Cooper, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
So do it. And Travis says, how do you say to his last name again, Caleb?
Y'all give me a break, okay? This isn't fair.
Iamaleava.
No, it's Tagovailoa. There you go. Caleb knows how to say that. There's no question about it.